Windows 2003 allows you to bind multiple protocols to multiple NIC cards. Because of a protocol called NDIS, we have independence of all those components. Let's take a look at how to set that up. First of all, we'll go to Network Connections. And on this computer, I've got two NIC cards. Now, before we get into the NIC card properties, we can go to the Advanced menu of Network Connections and Advanced Settings to look at the binding order. So here are our two NIC cards. And for each NIC card, we'll see we have some things bound down here. File and print sharing for Microsoft Networks, and client for Microsoft Networks. The only thing bound is TCP/IP, and that's for each NIC card. So let's do an example of where we're going to perhaps want to change the bindings and change the binding order. On the first local area connection here on the properties, we can install a variety of things. We can install a client network redirector. So for right now, for a client, we have client for Microsoft Networks. That allows us to access other Microsoft computers. You may want to install a client for Novell, for a client computer to access a Novell server, for example. That would be called a Novell client redirector or network redirector. We can also install multiple protocols. Right now, we've got TCP/IP installed for our protocol. For communicating with Novell networks, we could install IPX/SPX for a protocol. And finally, services. We have file and print sharing for Microsoft Networks, network load balancing. Network load balancing is a service, and so we can install various services onto our network connection here. So let's take a look at an example of each. We'll add in a client here. And you'll see the only client we have available out of the box is client service for NetWare. That would allow our computer to access a Novell computer. We're going to go ahead and install that. Okay, now for all of these, we are not going to restart the computer because we're not actually going to be using these components, but we'll at least see what they look like in the console here. So there is our client service for NetWare, now allowing us to access other computers that are running NetWare. Let's go ahead and install another protocol. Here we've got a larger list of protocols to choose from. AppleTalk can be installed if you'd like to communicate with Macintosh computers, of course. We've got TCP/IP version 6, that's the up-and-coming TCP/IP version, and multicast. So as an example, we'll go ahead and install AppleTalk. There we go. Now looking at our list, we've got our two client pieces. We had NLB to start with. We had file and print sharing to start with. We just added the AppleTalk protocol. Now you'll also notice IPX/SPX, NWLink. NWLink is Microsoft's version of IPX/SPX. Notice this IPX/SPX compatible transport protocol. This was installed with our Novell client automatically, because if you have a client for Novell networks installed, it's going to also install the protocol you need to use to communicate with Novell computers. And then there's, of course, TCP/IP already installed. Let's take a look at a service installation. So the only two services out of the box that you can install are Quality of Service, QoS, or SAP, which would be used with Novell networks, among other things. Let's go ahead and install QoS just for the fun of it. And there we go. Okay. And of course, we do not want to restart. We're just doing all this for fun. And so we now have QoS on the list of all of our various items. So we've got client pieces. Our two client services here, client for Microsoft Networks. We have protocols installed. We have AppleTalk. We have NWLink IPX/SPX. We have TCP/IP. And we have some services installed. So we've got QoS service, network load balancing service, etc. Now let's take a look at our bindings again. Now let's take a look at our advanced settings and advanced menu, advanced settings. And here we have the binding order. Now on local area connection 1, so to speak, the bindings we have to do with our basic services, our client pieces. So we have client for NetWare networks, client for Microsoft Networks, and we have file and print sharing for Microsoft Networks. For each one of these, we can choose between TCP/IP and IPX/SPX. For local area connection 3, notice we did not do anything to local area connection 3, and yet we can still bind a protocol to local area connection 3. Now, for example, we've got local area connection 1 here. Let's say that we're accessing other Microsoft computers. We're using the client for Microsoft Networks piece. The binding order here states that when this computer, as a client, attempts to access other Microsoft computers, the first protocol this computer will try to use is NWLink, IPX-SPX. Well, that doesn't make any sense because 99.9% of Microsoft computers are probably going to be using TCP/IP. In fact, maybe even a greater percentage. So wouldn't it make sense to always try to use TCP/IP first? Well, you may have to adjust your binding order then. And what we can do is click on TCP/IP and click on the up arrow, and now that will be the preferred protocol to be used. Now, if a client is trying to access another Microsoft computer and TCP/IP fails, then it will try and use IPX-SPX. And so therein lies the benefit of being able to alter your binding order. For the client for NetWare networks, for example, you would certainly want to use IPX-SPX first as your preferred protocol. Finally, one other way to look at the binding order is that we have two NIC cards on the computer here. Perhaps local area connection 1 is connected to both Microsoft and Novell computers, but perhaps local area connection 3 here is only connected to Microsoft computers. Therefore, in local area connection 3, we can uncheck, not only reduce the preference of NWLink, but we can also even uncheck NWLink so it's not even used. And we can undo the client service for NetWare altogether.